Hi there. This video is going to be about GPS. I collected data back in April, intending to do something with it, to make a little video, and I never did. This morning I saw someplace a posting of something about that GPS is actually high-flying balloons, and anything but orbiting satellites. We can't have that be the case. It has to be high-altitude balloons. That's where it comes from. Of course, if you're following this whole topic, you're probably familiar with seeing people talking about that GPS is nothing more than antennas that are mounted on buildings, or that they are cell towers, this type of thing. And and people are believing that. I'm shaking my head. All you have to do is drive through the desert and look at your phone where you have no signal, no cellular signal, yet your Garmin GPS is, operating just fine. Okay, well, not everyone lives near deserts. Maybe it's urbanization. People are just able to just believe anything now. Well, look, I'm going to try to be helpful in this. I'm not laughing, and I'm not going to mock anybody. What I'll try to do is some of my reactions, sometimes you can hear it in my voice, is just, I don't know, like a disbelief in that people are believing these things. So I need to move past that, and if I'm going to be helpful with this stuff, I need to do things and present things that just offer the opposing view. And that's what I'll try to do here. The big thing that you're going to see in this video is that the evidence for satellites is actually contained within the data that we're recording with our GPS receiver. So it's in there. It's well defined. I'm going to show that to you. And with that, okay, so once I'm done with that presentation, I don't know if I haven't seen anybody else make a video like this one to try to refute this claim. But once I'm done with that, the people who are wondering, are there satellites or are there not satellites? Is this really true that GPS works from cell towers or high-flying, high-altitude balloons? You have to then go back and ask the people making the claim, well, how are they doing that? How are they performing the trickery to make it appear as though it's operating from orbiting satellites, but it's not? How are they doing it? I mean, you just can't say it. You have to show how it's done. So, okay, that's the premise of what I'm going to show you now. Here's a screenshot of a website I went to called OpenSignal, and I grabbed a screenshot of the Wharton State Forest because I wanted to find a place where there were no cellular signals at all. So there's no cellular coverage here back in the forest, and it's not that far from me. So we drove back there. Isn't that exciting? And I'll spare you the rest. There's a couple more puddles, but now before we drove back, I want to show you what I did. I stopped along the roadway near the entrance to the park. There's an old triangulation station called Atzine. So it's there at the Atzine State Park. And I put a receiver on there. I actually used 2 GPS receivers for the test. So that's this one. Here you can see the range pole point sticking there. Here you can see, yes, I am getting a position. However, I'm out there on the roadway, so I cannot claim that this is coming from satellites yet. And what you see on the screen is this is the almanac, which shows you, just as I want to describe it, I'm changing. Well, here you can see the signal to noise ratio for all the satellites being tracked. You can see the azimuth and the elevation of each satellite. You can see G and R. G is GPS, R are the Russian satellites. They're called GLONASS satellites. And, there's my position. And here I'm going to probably just start logging raw data. So we don't need to watch that. So the next thing is, we drove back. Along the way, I was checking my phone. Here I still have signal. And I think that one I snapped out there at the road. So there's signal out there. And we drove back, and when I finally got to a place where there was no signal, that was going to be the place to perform the test. And I opened Google Maps, and there's the position. I know exactly where these sand roads are, back in the forest. And the next thing I'll show you is the recording of what we saw. Oh, before I show you that, hold on. I'll just show you. All I did was a snapshot of, I just put the receiver onto the hood of the car. That's it. And this is the data collector that communicates with that by Bluetooth. So keep in mind, there is a GNSS receiver running over on Station Atzine, back by the road, collecting raw data that I can use later. Okay, now with this. And what you're seeing here is, this is the almanac. That tells me how many satellites are actually available. Over here, you will see the bars fill up when it's tracking all those satellites. Right now, there's only 3. You're going to see why in a second. I've got a shovel sitting on top of the receiver. And you'll watch as I take the shovel off and put it back on, and take it off and put it back on. You'll see these satellites, these fields will populate with bands indicating that there's a signal coming in. Put the shovel back on and disappears. So let's watch that. You hear it beeping. It beeps to warn you that it has insufficient number of satellites to compute the position. If you can hear that. You'll hear it again the next time it happens. So there's the shovel is off. Look at all the satellites are being tracked. Shovel goes on. It starts beeping immediately because we've lost the tracking. Now here you see that the position just dropped out. We take this off again, and it won't take long for that position to reappear as it did. So it's going to hang on to the position for a little bit, and I really think that's really the data collector hanging on, but you'll see it drop out. It just doesn't take that long. Here you can see, again, there it goes. All right, so it's gone. It hung on for a little bit. But again, you can see no tracking. And over here, you're going to find out that the signal to noise ratio it isn't even there. It's 0. You can see the azimuths, the elevations, but no signal. This information here, the azimuth and elevation, is coming from the almanac, which is the file that contains the orbits of the satellites. So it knows where they are. It just isn't able to find them. And here I just give you a view of where I am out there in the woods. Pardon me. All right, so it's still beeping. All right, so, oh, by the way, what I did after that was I took the shovel off, and then I laterally started recording some data. And I think I recorded about 15 or 20 minutes of raw data there. So what I'll show you next is, I guess, the data. Let's look at the data. We'll look at it in a few ways. I'll show you it in its raw form. This is the observation file. And this is a RINEX file. That means Receiver Independent Exchange Format. And, you know, it's just filled with numbers, right? So I'm not going to sit here and describe what all these numbers mean, but I will show you where you can find out what that is. And also the navigation file is output from the receiver. This is the navigation data, and let me show you what all this means. So you need both of these files. You need a file that contains the orbital parameters in order to compute the positions of the satellites, and then you actually need the file that your receiver recorded of the cycles of waves, of the actual ranges, so that it can do an intersection problem. It's a trilateration problem that it solves by taking the coordinates of all the satellites, taking the ranges that have been computed to the antenna on the ground, and it does an intersection, and that's how you get your latitude and longitude. That's just a simple explanation. Maybe I'll make another video another time going into further detail. Now, I wanted to show you RINEX. That's the other thing I wanted to show you. I guess I got to go to a browser. You can read about it on Wikipedia. How about that? Here's a PDF book. You can download this book, the Receiver Independent Exchange Format, and it is a definition that has been agreed to, that all the manufacturers, even though they have their own proprietary binary files to record their data, they've all agreed to that they could output the data in this format so that anybody can use the data from any receiver. Okay, that's why it's called independent exchange. And the output is an independent format as well, called ASCII. And all right, continuing with the explanation of what RINEX is, there's a website you can go to with a nice little tutorial on these files. And what's nice is that as you go across and light up, you actually light up the definitions here. So like here's the Keplerian orbital parameters, etc. That's the navigation file, and here's the observation file. It's telling us that these are the signal L1 of GPS satellite 16, and that's the number in full cycles. This is way beyond the level at which I want to go into on this video. But these things are defined and well known and available to anybody. I'll shut that down. This was also kind of a neat site as well that you can hover over, and it's going to tell you, more about the files. So before I go into this topic, I thought I'd just go ahead and start a project and process the data. So I'm going to do a new project. I'm going to start the job in state plane coordinates, New Jersey. I had some technical difficulties starting up my software, so I had to pause the video. Anyway, I've made this project. It's in New Jersey state plane coordinates. That's the reference. I'm going to go and get this data. Grab these files, drag those in. And that's the point I called it. I called it the date, no cell service. That didn't, it truncated it. Oh, there it is. It is fully, it's all there. Good. It's just 13 minutes worth of data. And I'll say okay. It's importing. I'll go get the other receiver. All right, there it is. No cell service point. And I'm going to import this is my receiver running on that station called @. Okay. So immediately we see that there's data here that can be processed. It has not been processed yet, so I'm going to compute the vector from one point to the other. Before I do that, I want to show you what else you can do. You know, the National Geodetic Survey operates a whole system of permanently mounted stations. And as far as antennas on buildings go, I guess this is as close as you could get to saying, yeah, there are antennas mounted on buildings. Yeah, there they are. But guess what? This is not a transmitter. You know, you realize how much power you would have to generate to transmit signals that far. It just wouldn't work. The signal structure of GPS itself, the decibel level of it is so low. It's amazing it makes it as far as it does. So anyway, I'm going to download some data from here to also create a vector from this core station to my project. Now I could go ahead and look for the data here, tell it what day it was, what time of day it was, but I can also just go to, in my software, I can say internet download, tell it I want data from this CORS. CORS means continually operating reference station. Automatic. And it actually looks at the time I was there and grabs it automatically for me. I don't have to do anything. I can say, okay, yeah, go get me that data. It's analyzing the downloaded data. Okay, and I'm going to say import. Well, it's 2 hours worth of data, and I'll say okay. And boom, now we see that there's two other possible vectors that can be processed. By processing, I mean, that's another video. Anyway, the end result is going to be a pretty decent position. It may not be as good as this one, but it's going to end up being pretty good for out in the woods, because I was definitely in some canopy and pine conditions that makes it not an optimal place to be doing geodetic type surveys with GPS. So let's see. You know what else? I'm gonna download the IGS final orbits. I'll show you who they are in just a second. Let's go get that. So I'm importing what's called the final orbits. And by that I mean when you record GPS data yourself, you're getting what's called the broadcast orbit. So it's a prediction of the orbits as to where the satellites are. And that's the navigation file. And later on, you can there are different science agencies that refine that orbit. They compute it and determine where the satellites really were. And that's what I just did. I imported that file. So I think that's it. Maybe, you know what else I'll do is get the NGS control for station @. Why don't we do that? Remember, I showed you that monument? I'm going to bring this out to Google Earth. All right, there we are out in the forest. Now keep in mind, these are just potential vectors that can be processed. They are not processed yet. And here is where we are out here in this park. That's a birdhouse right there. What I'm going to do is use my NGS control. I certainly don't need 6 miles. I can do 0.3. That's good enough. I'm going to specify that I want horizontal control, second order or better. I could have told it I wanted GPS station because that is a GPS point. No stations found. You're making me look bad. What the heck are you talking about? I'm going to do that again. I'm going to say GPS sites only. There we go. Boom. That's it. That station. So it's station @. So that's been saved. This is an old station. It originates as an old triangulation station back in 1935, but has very recent recoveries, and of course they superseded values on it going back to to the old North American datum of 1927. You have these values, and then you can see its pedigree coming up through time for each adjustment. And you'll see the slight changes, big change from 27 to 83, but then thereafter, smaller and smaller changes. I've got a whole other video on just researching geodetic control, so I won't spend a lot of time here. This is a pretty accurate position on this mark. There's its latitude and longitude and its orthometric height. So I'm going to import, I'm done with Google Earth. So I can now go get that station. Here it is. Drag that in here. So there it is. And now I'll go ahead and process. Survey, process baselines. I forgot to tell it to use the precise ephemeris. I'm going to have to go change that. I'll stop that. Let's try that again. Okay, here's what we have from the NGS cores called NJTW to station @. We have a fixed solution, and there's its horizontal and vertical precision. From station @, which I collected that data, to my no cell service point, I get a fixed position. It's being flagged though that the positional tolerance is a little higher than we have it set for as just a check. And then it's telling me this one's definitely not as good as all the rest, but I'll still save it because look, it's just a test point out in the woods, and we'll see what we get. So I'm going to save that. All right, and the next thing I'll do, so you can see the whole process, is I'm going to run a small least squares adjustment where I'll hold the core station fixed. Okay. Now, even though we have a published position on station @ from the data sheet that I read in, I'm going to leave that open. And we're going to see how well we check into it, if you follow what I'm talking about. So I'm going to run this least squares adjustment. And, you know, in simple explanation, this is held absolutely fixed. The processed vectors are being used to generate positions here and here from the cores and also from here to here. So now I'm just going to look at the weighting here. I'm going to readjust that with the weight applied. Results. Okay, so we've passed the chi-square test, and if I click on @, we see that we've determined this position at these positional tolerances tight, very tight. Pretty happy with the results there, and that's at a 95% confidence interval. Let's see how well we did out in the woods. I'm still saying, hey, that's not so bad. About 1/10 of a foot by 1/10 of a foot. I'm just rounding off. You know, it's 1¼ by 1¼ in northing and easting, and about 3 inches for elevation. That's the positional tolerance there. pretty cool. I'm happy with that. Let's see. Oh, you know what I meant to do is check how well we hit the published position of @. Let me generate my report. So let's see here. So what we're seeing here is that the position that I just processed agrees with the published value for station @ at these levels, 100th, 100th and a half. Now, even if I rounded it off by 200ths by 200ths by about 1/10. So not bad at all. Of course, I have no published position for my no cell service point. So I have nothing to compare it to, but it does, it's, as you saw, positional tolerances on that point are pretty tight. So I forget if I even showed you. Yeah, I did. I showed you this. Yeah. All right. So I showed you the cores. I also wanted to show you the IGS. I meant to show you that because I downloaded a precise ephemeris from the IGS right here. And these are all the cores stations that they maintain around the world. And again, anybody can come to this website and download data. If you want to play around, there's different softwares you can use. You could process vectors across the country. I mean, you know, it's doable. You could download a whole 24-hour data set and do that processing. So I guess I'm going on and on here, but the point here is that if this is all made up and that satellites aren't real, this is a pretty elaborate scheme that they have going. So anyway, here's the position. Here is the end result here. I'll just show you is the latitude and longitude at that point. Also, it's projected planar coordinates on the New Jersey state plane coordinate system. Shall I rest my case at this point? Let me save that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to show you. I don't think so. We'll leave it there. I'd love to hear from anybody who might have an idea on just how the trickery is performed. I'd like to hear from anybody who, you know, liked what I showed here and thought it was of value. So you'll notice that on my videos nowadays, the comments are turned off. That's just to a couple reasons. I don't have a lot of time to do the commenting back and answering questions, so I feel like I'm leaving people hanging who are asking questions. I don't want to do that. I also don't want to deal with people who really act pretty ignorantly and say really ridiculous things to me and others. I'm not going to provide a platform for that. I said in another video, I'm really looking to connect with people. So, you know, let's go back to the good old-fashioned writing emails to each other. And if you want to send me a private message, you know, more than willing to answer you back and, you know, maybe make a connection, and we'll do it that way, person to person. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed what I showed you here, and you learned some things. And I guess I'll see you on YouTube again in another video. All right, take care. See you later.